fellow bibliophiles, and welcome back to Blatantly Bookish. I'm Marissa, and today I want to chat about the books that I read in the month of November. This wrap-up is a bit belated, but better late than never, so let's get into the books. The first book that I finished in the month of November was Godmersham Park by Gill Hornby. This was a highly anticipated read for me, and it did not disappoint. Godmersham Park is a historical fiction book about the real-life figure of Anne Sharp and her relationship with the Austen family. Anne was governess to Jane Austen's niece, Fanny Knight, between 1804 and 1806, and during that time she formed a friendship with Jane that lasted the rest of Jane's life. The book examines Anne's work as a governess and the limitations of social positions available to single women during the time period. Gill Hornby, as always, does a remarkable job of sticking to historical fact while filling in the spaces between history, the things that we can never really know, such as how Anne felt about her position and how she felt about the institution of marriage. If you want to hear more of my detailed thoughts on Godmersham Park, I made an entire video about it already, so rather than repeating everything from that video, I'll just direct you to go watch it. But Godmersham Park is fantastic, and it's a really great book for anyone who is interested in historical fiction, or Jane Austen, or the Regency era, or the role of a governess, and I just highly recommend that you check it out. In November, I also read Lucy Worsley's newest book, her biography of Agatha Christie, titled Agatha Christie, an Elusive Woman. I've read a handful of Agatha Christie's work over the years and really enjoy her as an author, but I knew next to nothing about her life before reading this book. And of course, Lucy Worsley is one of my favorite nonfiction authors and always seems to write thorough and well-researched nonfiction about topics that really interest me. I loved her biographies of Jane Austen and Queen Victoria, and her book about the history of the home, If Walls Could Talk, I believe it's called that, and her book about the British preoccupation with murder and the rise of the police force called The Art of English Murder. I read this biography on audiobook, which was an amazing experience because Lucy Worsley narrates the book herself, and she has such a wonderful narrative voice. I guess she gets a lot of practice from all of the TV documentaries and things she does as well. I also had the book out in print from the library though, so that I could look through the accompanying images of Agatha Christie as a younger woman and her homes and her spouses and all of the lovely supplemental images that are included in the print format. Agatha Christie had a very interesting life and career. She really is the queen of crime, and her books are so popular that they are second only to Shakespeare and the Bible. She remains history's most performed female playwright. She's this monumental literary success, and yet in her daily life she was very ordinary and often overlooked. She lived through such a large span of history too, and it's interesting to see how that's reflected in her work. She was born in the Victorian era, lived through the Edwardian period, lived through both world wars, and into the 1970s. So much changed during her lifetime, and even Agatha was constantly changing herself. Worsley subtitles this biography The Elusive Woman, because in some ways, it's hard to get to the center of who Agatha Christie truly was, since she was constantly reinventing herself. She had 5 different names during her lifetime alone. First, she was Agatha Miller, then by marriage Agatha Christie, and later Agatha Mallowan. She had her pen name Mary Westmacott, where she was able to write some more semi-autobiographical fiction without pressure from readers' expectations. I've never read any of her Mary Westmacott work, but it's supposedly very different in nature to the stuff that she wrote as Agatha Christie. And then, of course, later in life, she was given the title of Dame for her contribution to literature. There are just so many periods of her life and different facets to her, and she's genuinely a really interesting person to read about. Lucy Worsley explores Agatha Christie's relationship with mental illness and Agatha's 11-day disappearance in 1926, which sounds like something out of one of her novels itself. Worsley explores Agatha's role as a mother and her relationship with family, both in her life and in her works. and how conventional family isn't really necessary to thrive. Her characters of Miss Marple and Poirot certainly don't belong to the conventional nuclear family. And even in Agatha's own life, she had a second marriage to someone significantly younger than her, and surrounded herself in large part with a family of her own making. Worsley focuses on how Agatha Christie in many ways shattered the 20th century's rules for women, but also how her work reveals the prejudices of her class and time. And it's interesting to think about how Agatha Christie's books have aged. There's this pervading perception of them as kind of quaint, classic, slightly old-fashioned British literature, but they were very modern and very of their time. Agatha, too, to me at least, is remembered as this older woman with the quintessential cat-eye glasses, but she lived a very modern and progressive life. She went surfing in Hawaii and loved fast cars and was interested in the emerging field of psychology. I was completely and utterly sucked into Agatha Christie's life while reading this book, and it made me want to pick up some more of Agatha Christie's books this winter. Lucy Worsley does a phenomenal job of exploring all of the facets of Agatha Christie and also connecting her life back to her works, and it was really just a joy to read. However, I have one critique about this book, and unfortunately, it's a really big one. It had spoilers for some of Agatha Christie's works, and a warning would have been greatly appreciated. I'm pretty sure it spoiled the plot twist of the murder of Roger Ackroyd for me. I say that I'm pretty sure it did because I did take my earbuds out during one sentence where I think she explicitly stated the plot twist. But I think that my mind put it together via context clues, and I feel pretty confident that I know what happens in the murder of Roger Ackroyd. There were 2 or 3 other books that were spoiled as well, but they just didn't stick in my mind the same way. I think that if you skip ahead when the murder of Roger Ackroyd is first mentioned, you can still get a lot out of this book. But I'm still very annoyed that these spoilers were included. I didn't find it necessary to the biography as a whole, and I know that it'll put a lot of people off from reading this book. Overall, I really did enjoy this book. I just wish that I had read The Murder of Roger Ackroyd before reading it. Now that the damage is done, though, I could use some advice. Should The Murder of Roger Ackroyd be my next Agatha Christie, or should I wait in the hopes that I forget the plot twist? The thing is, I really don't think I'll forget the plot twist. And the twist, as far as I understand, may have been novel for the time period, but it's a convention that I've encountered before in other books and TV shows. It's just nice to not know that it's coming. So should I even bother reading The Murder of Roger Ackroyd at this point? I would really love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. And the last book that I finished in the month of November was a very slim nonfiction book by an author I've wanted to try reading for a while now. And that is Tell Me How It Ends, an essay in 40 questions by Valeria Luiselli. This book is a brief look into the Mexican-American border and the state of immigration in the United States, as told through the author's own immigration experience, as well as her experience working as a translator for undocumented Latin American children in the New York City Immigration Court. The book seeks to answer the question of what will happen to these unaccompanied, undocumented immigrant children when they reach the United States. And it's brilliantly structured around the 40 questions that Luiselli is responsible for asking on the official immigration questionnaire. The beauty of this book is that it does so much in such little space. We learn of Luiselli's own experiences with immigration, how her family is living in the U.S. as non-residential aliens, and the arduous and stressful process of applying for green cards. She explores her own feelings of fear and anxiety as she goes through the process, and recounts how a road trip with her family through the American Southwest during this process deeply affects her. She discusses her experiences working with the children in the court system, and specifically focuses on one young man's story. She contrasts the intimacy of these experiences with the impersonality of the immigration system. Peppered in with these poignant testimonials are broader facts and information about the experiences of children traversing the Mexican-American border. She tells of La Bestia, the dangerous train that most children take at some point in their journey, how 80% of women and girls who make this journey are raped along the way, and how more than 102,000 unaccompanied children are detained at the border. The effect of Luiselli's writing is a profound humanization of these young migrants. It encourages us as readers to imagine that behind each of these statistics, each of these 102,000 children, is a story as rich and specific as the one she focuses on. Living in New York, this book had a more immediate and personal impact on me as well. Too often, I think of immigration and the border crisis as something that's far away, that's taking place at the Mexican-American border, which I'm quite removed from geographically. But this book is a reminder that the effects of the events at the border reverberate here as well. My main critique about this phenomenal piece of nonfiction is that it may start to become dated. This book was written in 2017 and ends with trepidation at Trump's election and how that would impact the state of immigration in America. There is probably much more to say and expound upon since this book was written. I can't fault it for being written in 2017, but over time, this will become a snapshot of a very specific period in American history. I'm so curious if Luiselli still works at the immigration court and how things have changed since the end of the book. And then also, a part of me wanted more from this book. Working at the immigration court, Luiselli must have hundreds of stories to tell, but this book really only delved into one child's experience in great depth, and I found myself left wanting to hear more from these children. Perhaps the brevity of this piece is why it works so well, though. It makes such a short and powerful impact and cultivates the feeling that this story isn't over yet, that there are so many other children out there and so much more to be done when it comes to immigration. So on that note, I will leave you with a quote from the book about the unfinished nature of immigration stories. In the meantime, while the story continues, the only thing to do is tell it over and over again as it develops, bifurcates, knots around itself. And it must be told, because before anything can be understood, it has to be narrated many times, in many different words, and from many different angles, by many different minds. So those are the books that I read in the month of November. It was definitely a quality over quantity month for me. I would love to hear in the comments down below if you've read any of these books, what you thought about them. Do you think you'll pick any of them up anytime soon? Do please go check out my video on Godmersham Park if you're interested in hearing more about it, and please weigh in on whether I should read The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. Have you read any of Valeria Luiselli's works? Where would you recommend that I start with her fiction? That is all I have for you today. I look forward to seeing you in another bookish video very soon. Bye!